sir. How
Hi.
are you?
I'm doing fine, fine.
It's nice
Yeah.
to be back
Yeah,
after.
it's good to see you too.
Good
Yeah,
to
after the
see you.
pandemic, it's
Yeah.
been a road. So,
So let's talk about the pandemic. How did it affect Fathom?
well, as you probably know, most of our content is distributed to movie theaters, so it heavily impacted our distribution and programming. But we came through it very, very well. We sent everyone home and furloughed them for 1 week, and 1 week after we did so, internally at Fathom, we got our first PPP loan, and so that was good. Then we ended up getting a second loan, and then we got an ERC credit, employee retention credit, that helped get us through the whole pandemic. And then as theaters began opening up again, we got back to some sense of normalcy at that point. Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that. Was there any thought during that time, because streaming became so popular, to kind of match up with some of the streaming outlets that are out there?
Well, it's an interesting, to do something like that, you'd have to know a little bit more about how we actually procure our content, and that is that we license it, we don't own the IP rights to it. So we do have a few content providers that look to us for downstream and streaming, but for the most part, most of our major content, they already have their streaming outlets established. So we thought about it. Yeah, it was a heck of a time to launch a streaming service.
Yeah.
So that,
Yeah, but now they're all fighting.
yeah, they are, and you see what's happening with Netflix right now, and that type of thing. You see it's very interesting, because I come from a cable television background, and what you see happening in the streaming industry is what I call cable television on steroids, like 30, 40 years ago.
That's very
Because what you end up seeing is that everybody establishes their network, just like they did with cable. Everybody tries to procure as many subscribers as possible. That's what they're doing now. And then you begin to see price increases, and then you begin to see consolidation. And you're already into that consolidation period right now with some of the things that are going on. So it's very much like cable was 30 or 40 years ago.
That's an interesting analogy, absolutely. It's going to be very interesting to see as well how those streaming wars affect movie theaters, or if they're going to affect movie theaters at all. I know there's been quite a commitment this week, especially to a theatrical window again, which is a great thing to hear. So last time we met 3 years ago, you were all expanding into more globally over in Europe and things. So tell me how that's coming along. How has it been successful? Well, COVID kind of derailed a little bit of that.
Yeah, we were moving ahead full steam forward with international distribution. We still are moving in that direction. And what's very interesting to us, not only globally but mainly domestically, was to see coming out of the pandemic how many, and even in the pandemic, who was closing their theaters, who were leaving them open, how quickly they opened the ones that they closed. So to get any kind of real scalable distribution was a real challenge during the pandemic. But now, we're seeing audiences come back to theaters.
Yeah.
We're seeing a real need, given some of the product delays and so forth, for event cinema. And I think this is a great time for event cinema to be in this business, to be part of this business, and you're going to see event cinema become a much bigger part of the box office than it used to be.
I agree. One of the things that we talked about, my partner and I, was there's not as much movie content right now. And I said, well, that's because they were all shut down for COVID, and now they're ramping back up. So movie theaters and movies will be coming back stronger and stronger, and we've seen that this week with the content. But there is a lack of content right now, and it's a perfect opportunity for Fathom to do as much as they can, absolutely.
A good example of that was late last year. We had been working actually for 2 years on a piece of content that had never been seen in theaters before, with a faith-based film called The Chosen with the Messengers, and it was with Angel Studios. They have the biggest crowd-funded app that's free in the faith area, and so their audience had never gathered communally anywhere before. And so they had filmed seasons 1 and 2, and they were waiting for season 3. There were some backups because of delays because of COVID, like everyone else. And they decided to secretly film this Christmas special, which was the birth of Jesus through the eyes of Mary and Joseph. And then they incorporated all kinds of faith-based musical artists associated with it. Beautiful piece that was done. And it was the first week of December that we were going to release it. Only 2 dates, December 1st and 2nd. And it was so popular, and their audience wanted to gather communally because they've only seen this kind of content online before. And so all the stars lined up for this, and we sold over 1 million tickets. It was our biggest film ever that we've distributed.
Well, that's fantastic. You never know what's going to hit, right?
That's right.
So, just out of curiosity, because I've asked this to a couple of people, COVID, we saw box office numbers not so strong, and then we got Spider-Man, and then we got the Batman, and now we're going to get Doctor Strange and all of that. So do you think that the box office is recovering, or do you think that it's only certain events that are really getting people into theaters, and it's going to take a longer time for the box office to level off?
Well, I would tell you that the beauty of what we do at Fathom is that we do 135 events a year. That's how many we're going to do this year. Wow. And that's actually down from about 150. But that's very intentional. It's very strategic. We want higher quality, less quantity. We want to put more butts in seats, and sell more tickets. And because we're so diverse with our content, it's been very interesting to see, for example, the Metropolitan Opera. How is that audience coming back? How is anime audience coming back? How is faith-based audience coming back? And obviously Live, which we're going to be doing a lot more of, but Live at the time, all that production was shut down. But that being said, the audiences in the faith-based area and the audiences in anime, the audiences in original programming, we're bringing back Golden Girls, different episodes of Golden Girls like we did with Friends' 25th anniversary. So those audiences are very quick to come back, and they want to gather communally, whether it's a girls' night out for Golden Girls or a boxing match, where the guys get together and maybe bring their sons or whatever, that type of thing. So the audiences that are a little bit slower to come back, as we've seen with the commercial product as well, would be some of the older audiences. So again, some of the arts, classic movies. But what we're seeing is we have a forecast for the rest of the year, and it's tracking very, very nicely toward the end of the year, ramping back up to what it used to be. We will probably end the year somewhere around 75% of the benchmark that everybody uses, which is 2019, the last full year before the pandemic. And I think the industry is probably going to end up somewhere in general, not just Fathom, but 70 to 75%. So I think we're going to end up on the upper end of what the analysts are looking at. And then, we'll see over the next couple of years as things settle in with production and streaming. Content is king, right? So if you put, like The Chosen, if you put something on screen like that there's a desire for it, there's a demand for it, I am very confident that the audiences will come back out. And
those types of audiences are not necessarily perhaps your typical moviegoer. So it's not that, 10, 15% that is guaranteed. These are new bodies coming into the theaters, which is always something that theaters are looking for. So I think that's really great. I want to talk about, in the hallway, down that way, there is a 3-panel display: be animated, be entertained, be inspired. So what does that mean to you?
Well, I think, our marketing department has done a very good job of building our brand. You had, I've been associated with the alternative content business, which now is known as the event cinema business. We were instrumental in rebranding the industry name, being the leader in the industry. And it is just that. I mean, we want people, we have content that you can be entertained, inspired, that relates to the faith-based. And I have to tell you, having been in this job now for, I guess, about 5 years, one of my personal goals was to make sure that we were putting something on the screen that was incremental, that we could move people and it made a difference to people. And it isn't to say that some of the movies that are out commercially don't do that, but you do see people who walk out of the movie theater and something that we've shown has impacted their life in a positive way, or it made them think about something. The Case for Heaven, where they're discovering and examining the afterlife. Is there an afterlife? And got me wondering, right? So it has made an impact on several people, and I think that those 3 words are very, they talk about what Fathom is really all about. In knowing that our content is so diverse, but coming up with 3 words that captures everything.
Yes. Let's talk about the Inspired, because I know that was just released today that there is going to be, you've teamed up with TBN and Kirk Cameron to do, Kirk Cameron presents The Homeschool Awakening. Talk a little bit more about that for me.
So Kirk has done a number of films with us. We got into the faith-based area back in 2012 with a couple of films, 2012 and 13, Monumental and Unstoppable, that we did with Kirk. And we've had a lot of very successful projects with Kirk, and he'd been working on this. This is something that he was very passionate about with regard to homeschooling. And he really had this vision before the pandemic happened, but kind of like we were talking about with the streaming services, great time to launch a streaming service. A lot of people now are contemplating or have contemplated homeschooling in addition to the ones that were before. So Kirk is a huge visionary, and he's a very good partner of Fathom's, and I think people will enjoy. If you're contemplating homeschooling, or you are actually homeschooling, or know somebody that is, and I think everybody sort of knows somebody that is, right? It's definitely worth seeing. I'd spend the time and the money to go see this one.
Nice. Yeah. I think that more people are contemplating it because they had their kids home who were, going to school from home. So they saw a different opportunity, and I think it's going to become a little bit more popular than homeschooling was in the past. And I think that this is a great partner to get people more interested in homeschooling, and just to kind of give them maybe the mechanics of what homeschooling really is all about.
It is, and as usual, Kirk has a faith twist to his content and everything. So you get that element of it as well, which is very, very unique. And he's very convincing, and like I said, just a very good partner to Fathom.
Fantastic. I just want to talk a little bit about anime, because I am amazed at how popular anime is. Yeah. Did you have any indication, any idea that anytime an anime movie comes into the theaters, it's in the top 5?
Well, I have to tell you, and I'll be very transparent about this. When I first took this job at Fathom, I did not know a lot about anime, and we have some experts internally that educated me very, very quickly. And I think one of the first things I learned, which was one of the most important, there's anime product for just about every age. It's adults, it's young children. I thought when I hear anime, I think of cartoons almost. There's content for everything in between. There's even hard R anime, believe it or not. Oh. And so it's a very popular category. At times I don't pretend to understand a lot of it, but there is an audience for it. We just launched Ghibli Fest, and we're presenting 5 or 6 titles there this year in conjunction with our partner G Kids. And those titles just keep coming back. Princess Mononoke and other titles like that. And the audiences love it. They keep coming back. And now we're to a point where even some of their children who, they bring their kids to it because they grew up with some of it. So It's the anime category will represent somewhere around 17 to 18% of our overall revenue for 2022.
Yeah, so a little significant there,
Yeah, oh,
absolutely. Yeah, I have a college-age stepdaughter who loves it. You know, could binge watch My Hero Academia, and I'm like, you need to do schoolwork. But I was just so surprised at how big that particular industry is. It's really impressive. And like you said, they have hard R, and they have, you know, for little kids, it runs the gamut. So I want to thank you for taking the time to catch up with us again here at CinemaCon, and I'm looking forward to many more years of speaking with you about what Fathom's got coming up and what you're doing to innovate.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the time, and stay well.
Thank you, you too.
Okay.